Welcome to part 2 of The Secret Billionaire. The black car did not belong to a rival businessman, and it did not belong to the press. It belonged to a man named Han Tae-sik, the son of the family Min-ho's father had crushed on his way to building Kang Holdings into what it was. A man who had spent 15 years quietly rebuilding his own fortune with one purpose sitting at the center of it, watching for the exact moment Kang Min-ho became vulnerable enough to be destroyed. Director Oh brought Min-ho the surveillance photos at 6 in the morning. Laying them across the kitchen island of the penthouse Min-ho had finally convinced Zara to visit. Though she still refused to move in, still insisted on paying her own rent, still went to work at the bakery every morning like nothing about her life had changed except the man waiting for her after her shift. He said someone watching her for 4 days, Oh said, tapping the photographs. Zara leaving the bakery, Zara at the market. Zara walking alone at night unaware. Tae-sik doesn't care about the company anymore, sir. He cares about taking something from you the way his family believes you took from them. Min-ho's jaw tightened until it ached. Move her into this building today. She won't agree to that. Then don't ask her. Tell her there's a leak in her building. Tell her whatever you have to tell her. I don't care. His voice had dropped into a register O had not heard since the worst of the takeover battles, low and flat and absolutely certain. I am not losing her to a grudge that has nothing to do with her. But Zara was not a woman who could be moved without her consent for long, and by that evening sitting across from him at the small kitchen table in his penthouse, arms crossed, eyes sharp, she made that clear. Not scared of a car parked on my street, Min-ho. You should be. He set the photographs down in front of her, hatting himself for it, hatting the fear that flickered across her face when she understood what she was looking at. This man's family lost everything when my father's company overtook theirs. He spent 15 years waiting for a way to hurt me. You're the way. She stared at the images of herself, taken without her knowledge, and something in her composure cracked for the first time since the night she found out who he really was. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want you to be afraid of my world before you'd even decided to stay in it. I'm already in your world, she said quietly. You don't get to protect me from that by keeping me in the dark. That's the same thing you did with the hoodie, Min-ho. You don't get to do it twice. He had no answer for that because she was right, and it terrified him more than Tae-sik ever could. The idea that his instinct to shield her from danger might cost him the very honesty that had made her love him in the first place. The following week, he tried to give her everything at once as if safety could be bought in bulk. A driver she didn't ask for. A new security detail outside the bakery that made her regulars uneasy. A credit card she refused to use even once. Zara pushed back on every single one, quietly furious in a way that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the sense that he was trying to wrap her in glass instead of standing beside her. I didn't fall for a man who could fix everything with money, she told him one night, exhausted, both of them raw from another argument about the driver idle outside her building. I fell for a man who sat on a curb and shared noodles with me. Don't turn into someone else because you're scared, he heard her. He pulled back the driver. He kept the security discreet, distant, invisible the way it had been when he was watching her from a rooftop weeks earlier, and instead he did the only thing he knew would actually reach her. He showed up. Every single day. Not with gifts, not with solutions, just with himself, sitting on the same curb outside the same bakery at the same hour, proving with nothing but presence that he had not disappeared back into the tower the moment the truth came out. It was working slowly, the way trust always does, one ordinary evening at a time, until the night everything Tae-sik had been building finally moved. Zara was closing the bakery alone. It was later than usual, a delivery had run behind and the street outside had gone quiet the way Seoul streets do in that strange hour between the dinner crowd and the late-night one. She locked the front door, turned toward the corner where Min-ho usually waited and found it empty. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He's not coming tonight. Get in the car if you want him to stay that way. She looked up and saw the black sedan idling at the curb, back door already open. A man in a dark suit standing beside it with an expression that told her running would not end well for either of them. She thought about screaming. She thought about the small kitchen knife still sitting in her bag from restocking earlier. She thought with a clarity that surprised her about her mother's voice telling her that fear was allowed but panic was a choice, and she was not going to make it easy for whoever this man worked for. Where is he? She asked, voice steadier than she felt. In the car, the man said. Or I make a phone call and it stops being just you. She got in the car. Min-ho found out 11 minutes later when Director Oh's phone lit up with an alert from the security feed outside the bakery. A black sedan pulling away with Zara visible in the back seat. Her face turned toward the camera for one deliberate second like she wanted them to see her, wanted them to know exactly what direction to look. Min-ho did not raise his voice, he did not throw anything. He went cold and precise in a way that frightened even Oh, who had worked beside him for a decade. Find the car, Min-ho said. Find it now and get Tae-sik on the phone. I don't care what you have to do. Location came back 40 minutes later. A warehouse on the outskirts of the city that had once belonged, ironically, to the very company Min-ho's father had taken from Tae-sik's family, a detail Min-ho understood immediately was not an accident but a message. He did not wait for police. He did not wait for a negotiation. He drove himself, Director O and 4 of his best men following in a second car, and the entire way there he thought of nothing except the sound of Zara's laugh outside the noodle shop, the warmth of her hand in his in the garden, the fierce, stubborn way she had told him not to become someone else out of fear, and he understood with total, burning clarity that he would tear apart everything he owned before he let this end any other way. The warehouse was dim, lit by a single bank of overhead lights, and Han Tisik was waiting in the center of it like a man who had rehearsed this moment for 15 years. He was tall, gray-templed despite being only in his 40s, dressed with the same immaculate control Min-ho recognized from every boardroom battle he had ever fought, and beside him in a chair, hands zip-tied but chin lifted, sat Zara, unhurt, furious, watching Min-ho walk through the doors like she'd known all along he would come. "Kang Min-ho," Tisik said, spreading his arms. "Finally, do you know how long I've waited to see you look this afraid?" "Let her go," Min-ho said. His voice did not shake. "This is between you and me. It always was. Your father didn't think so when he took everything my family built and smiled about it at parties for a decade," Tisik said, stepping closer. "So no, I don't think it's unreasonable that you understand what it feels like to watch someone you love become a bargaining chip. Has nothing to do with what my father did. Neither did my mother," Tisik said quietly, and for a second something genuinely broken moved behind his composed face. "She died waiting for an apology that never came. So here is mine, Min-ho. I want the company, all of it, signed over tonight in front of witnesses or she doesn't leave this building." Zara, who had been silent, watching the two men circle each other, finally spoke, her voice cutting clean through the tension. "Don't you dare sign anything for me." Min-ho did not look away from Tisik. "Zara, I mean it. Your grandmother didn't die so you could hand her legacy to a man using me as leverage. Fight him the right way. I trust you to get me out of here without giving him what he wants." Something in Min-ho's chest that had been braced to break for her to burn the whole empire down without hesitation, steadied instead because she was right, because she had never once wanted to be saved by a man erasing himself to do it. "You heard her," Min-ho said, and for the first time that night, something like the old confidence returned to his voice. "She doesn't want to be bought back and I'm not signing anything." He took a slow step forward. "But I'll tell you what I will do. I know exactly what your father's debts looked like before mine took the company. I know exactly which of your current investors would drop you the second they learned you kidnapped a woman off a Seoul street tonight. I have men outside this building right now with everything they need to make sure the police, the press, and every board member who still does business with you hears about it by morning, whether or not I walk out of here." T6's composure flickered. "So here's my offer," Min-ho continued, quiet and absolute. "You let her go right now and I make sure tonight disappears. No charges, no headlines, no ruin. Or you keep her in that chair one more minute and I promise you, everything you've spent 15 years rebuilding turns to ash by sunrise and I will not lose a single hour of sleep over it." Warehouse was silent except for the hum of the overhead lights. T6 looked at Min-ho, then at Zara, then at the four men now visible in the doorway behind Min-ho, patient and unmoving. "Cut her loose," T6 finally said, voice tight. The zip ties came off. Zara stood, rubbing her wrists, and walked straight past T6 without a glance, crossing the distance to Min-ho in 6 fast strides and stepping into arms that closed around her like they had been holding their breath for hours. "I'm okay," she whispered into his chest. "I'm okay, Min-ho." He held her so tightly she could feel his heartbeat slamming against her cheek. "I thought I lost you tonight," he said, voice raw in a way she had never heard from him, not even in the garden. "I have never in my life been that afraid." "You didn't," she said. "I'm right here." They left the warehouse together, his hand locked around hers the entire drive home, and neither of them spoke much because there was too much to say and not enough words yet steady enough to say it with. That night back in the penthouse, the adrenaline finally drained out of both of them at once, leaving something quieter and more fragile behind. Zara sat on the edge of the couch, still in her work clothes, hands finally still in her lap, and Min-ho knelt in front of her the way he had never let himself kneel for anyone. "Keep thinking about what he said," Zara admitted softly. "That I'm a bargaining chip, that being with you means people will always come for me because of who you are." "They will," Min-ho said, because he had promised her honesty and he intended to keep that promise even when it cost him. "I can't lie to you and tell you tonight was the last time danger comes near you. My world doesn't work that way. Then why should I stay in it? Because I would rather spend every day of my life standing between you and that danger than spend one more day pretending I don't love you enough to fight for it," he said. His hands came up to hold her face, careful, reverent, the same way they had in the garden weeks earlier. "Zara, I have built an empire out of things I don't feel proud of. I have made enemies I can't undo, but nothing I have ever built matters half as much as you sitting in that chair tonight, alive, safe, still choosing to look at me like I'm worth something." His voice broke on the last word. "Tell me you're not leaving because of tonight, tell me I haven't lost you." Zara looked at him for a long, aching moment, and something in her finally let go of the fear that had been sitting in her chest since the night she found out who he really was. The fear that loving him meant eventually being discarded once the danger became too much, too complicated, too far from the simple life she had built for herself out of nothing. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "I was scared tonight, I'm still scared. But I've been scared before alone with nobody coming for me. Tonight somebody came." Her hand covered his where it rested against her cheek. "That's not something I'm walking away from." He kissed her then, slow and unhurried. The kind of kiss that carried every unspoken fear of the last few weeks and every quiet promise neither of them had said out loud yet. And when she pulled him closer, when the space between them finally fully disappeared, the city lights outside the window blurred into something soft and forgiving, and neither of them thought once more that night about warehouses or contracts or men who wanted to burn their happiness down. There was only warmth and closeness, and the unbearable relief of two people who had almost lost each other choosing instead to stay. Morning came slow and gold through the penthouse windows. Zara woke before he did, and for a long moment she simply watched him sleep. The sharp, guarded lines of his face softened in a way she had never seen in daylight, and she understood with a certainty that startled her, that whatever came next she wanted to be the one lying beside him when it did. But her fear did not vanish overnight. No matter how certain that morning had felt, it crept back 3 days later, quiet and insidious, while she was alone in her apartment packing a bag for a weekend she'd agreed to spend at the penthouse. She caught her reflection in the mirror, hollow-eyed from broken sleep, and heard T6's voice again in her head, a bargaining chip, and something in her simply folded. She thought of every story she'd ever heard about men like Min-ho, powerful, protective, consumed with guilt, who eventually decided the woman they loved deserved a life without the danger they carried, who ended things not out of falling out of love, but out of some misguided nobility that never once asked her what she actually wanted. She thought about how easy it would be for Min-ho to wake up one morning and decide she was safer far away from him, and how she would have no say in that decision at all. So instead of waiting to find out, she made the choice herself. She left a note on the kitchen counter of her own apartment, packed one suitcase, and told her cousin in Houston she needed a few weeks. She turned her phone off before she could change her mind, and by the time Min-ho arrived that evening expecting her, the apartment was empty, the note simple and devastating in her neat handwriting. "I need space to figure out if I can survive loving you. Please don't come looking. I need this to be my choice." He read it twice, then a third time, standing in her empty kitchen with the paper trembling slightly in his hand, and something in him that had steadied after the warehouse cracked wide open again. Director O found him an hour later exactly where he expected to, sitting on the same curb outside the bakery where it had all started, staring at nothing, the note still in his hand. "She asked me not to follow her," Min-ho said quietly before O could speak. "Going to listen?" Min-ho was silent for a long moment, turning the note over in his fingers. "She's scared I'll leave her the way every powerful man in every story she's ever heard leaves the woman who's inconvenient to protect." He looked up, something fierce and clear returning to his eyes. "She thinks staying away is protecting herself from that, but she's wrong. I'm not going to become the man in that story." He stood, folding the note carefully into his jacket pocket. "Find out where she went. Not to bring her back. To go stand outside wherever she is until she's ready to let me in, exactly the way I did the first night I met her." It took O 2 days to track the flight to Houston, and Min-ho was on a plane within the hour, landing in a city he had never once in his life had reason to visit, standing outside a modest brick house belonging to a cousin named Adiz who opened the door with her arms crossed, and a look that told him she already knew exactly who he was. "She said not to follow her," Adiz said flatly. "I know," Min-ho said. "I'm not here to make her come back. I'm here because I don't want her to spend one more night thinking I'd let her disappear without a fight." He held up both hands empty, no gifts, no leverage, nothing but himself standing on a Houston porch in a wrinkled shirt after an 11-hour flight. "Please, just tell her I'm here. Whatever she decides after that, I'll respect it." Zara heard his voice from the hallway before she saw him, and something in her chest, the tight, guarded thing that had been clenched since the night of the warehouse, finally loosened at the sound of it. She stepped into the doorway. He looked wrecked, exhausted, nothing like the composed chairman on the magazine cover and everything like the man who had sat beside her on a curb sharing noodles with nothing to his name. "You weren't supposed to come," she said, voice thick. "I know," he said. "I came anyway because I'm done proving my love for you with money or power or grand gestures that mean nothing. I came the only way I know how to prove anything that matters. I showed up, same as the first time, same as I'll keep doing every single time you need me to for as long as you'll let me. I was scared you'd decide I was too much of a liability," she admitted, tears finally spilling over. "That you'd wake up one day and think I'd be safer without you." "I have thought exactly that," he said honestly, because he had promised her the truth and he was not going to stop now. "Every single day since the warehouse, some part of me has wondered if loving you is selfish, if I'm asking you to carry danger you never signed up for." He crossed the porch, stopping close enough to reach for her hands but not taking them yet, waiting. "But I decided something on that plane, Zara. Protecting you doesn't mean disappearing from your life. It means staying and fighting and building a world around you strong enough that nothing like that warehouse ever touches you again. I don't get to make that choice for you, only you get to decide if that's a life you want." Zara looked at him for a long moment, at the exhaustion and fear and stubborn devotion written plainly across his face, and she understood that this, precisely this, unglamorous and honest and terrified in equal measure, was exactly the kind of love her grandmother had always told her to hold out for. She took his hands. "I don't want a life without danger, Min-ho. I want a life with you in it, danger and all, because you keep showing up." She pulled him close. "Just don't ever let me run again without coming after me." Never again, he promised, and this time when he kissed her, there was nothing fragile or fade to black about the certainty in it. Only two people who had survived being torn apart twice and had no intention of letting it happen a third time. They returned to Seoul together a week later. Han T6's threats, true to Min-ho's word, dissolved into nothing once his own investors learned the truth of what he had done. His empire, built on 15 years of quiet vengeance, crumbled far faster than Kang Holdings ever had. Zara kept the bakery, though she cut her hours in half and spent the rest of her time finally, properly designing again, freelance work blooming into a small studio Min-ho funded without asking. Because some gifts, she'd realized, weren't about control at all, just love with nowhere else to go. 6 months later, at a gala held in the same tower where he had once stared numbly at his father's portrait, Kang Min-ho stood in front of 200 guests, took Zara's hand in front of every board member, rival and reporter who had ever doubted whether the chairman of Kang Holdings had a heart at all, and told them without a single prepared line that the woman standing beside him had taught him more about being a man worth respecting than his empire ever had. Then he got down on one knee right there beneath the chandeliers and asked her, simply, honestly, the way he'd learned to ask for everything that mattered, if she would stay with him for good. She said yes before he finished the question. They married the following spring in the same memorial garden where his grandmother's cherry blossoms still bloomed every year without fail. A small ceremony, nothing like the empire's usual excess, just family and Adiz flown in from Houston crying through the entire thing, and Director O standing quietly at the back with something suspiciously close to pride on his face. A year after that, in the same penthouse where it had all nearly fallen apart, Zara sat on the edge of their bed holding a small plastic test with two faint pink lines, laughing and crying all at once, and when Min-ho came home that evening to find her sitting there, glowing, radiant, waiting to tell him the family they had both nearly lost was about to grow, he sank to his knees in front of her the same way he had that first night in the garden, pressed his forehead to her still flat stomach, and finally, after a lifetime of being loved for the wrong reasons, understood exactly what it felt like to be given, freely and completely, the one thing his money had never been able to buy. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Afro K Love Diaries for more emotional Afro-Korean love stories every single week. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have gotten in that car for the man you loved or run the other way? I read every single one. See you in the next story.